Hey, Flowmies, it's time for another edition of the ITF Flowcast. So this week is another Gabe's Corner. So this week, I wanted to talk about a subject that is really important to me, and that is maintaining a growth mindset. But interestingly, just in our last podcast, we had our guest here, Melanie Edwards. Melody had spoken a lot about how having a growth mindset is so important to her. So instead of this just being me talking to you guys, I wanted to invite Melody in here and get her viewpoint and her thoughts, because I think she's just as passionate on the subject as I am. So Melody, thank you so much for joining us. How's everything going?
Great. Thanks for having me. I am very passionate about this topic.
Awesome. Now we come from this standpoint from very different areas. So I first wanted to just share a little bit about the background of why a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset is so important. So a while back in ITF, I had posted a video where I gave a little pep talk, and it was about embracing failure, not being a perfectionist, not being a pass or fail mindset towards your business. And I told a little bit about my background, how I grew up with anxiety, and I was very much a perfectionist. And as a result, if there was anything where I went into a realm where I did not feel like I was going to be either the best or at least close to the best, at the top of my class or at the top of whatever group, I would bail, because I could not handle the idea that somehow I had something that I was not, that I was deficient in, or I wasn't at least better than most of other people. And you get trapped in that, and I didn't realize it at the time, but that is a fixed mindset. That's a fixed mindset is typically someone who believes something is the way it is, and that's the way it's always going to be, and either you got it or you don't. And those who don't shouldn't be doing it, and those who do, hey, they're going to excel. And so you spend your life trying to find the areas that you excel in with relatively little work, and you work hard on those, but that traps you, and that keeps you stuck in a certain area. And that's exactly what happened to me. Is as the challenges came and the tests came, I shrunk back when I felt like I could not be the perfect, student or perfect whatever athlete, whatever scenario it was in. And it brought an intense amount of anxiety and stress on me, that it affected me physically, where I was becoming physically ill. And it wasn't until I actually in high school really tried my best. I honestly tried my best to take this class. It was calculus in high school. And if you go back and watch the video, I have it on one of the, I don't know if I made it into a Flowcast, but it's definitely an Into the Flow. And I'll post the link in the comments here in ITF and in YouTube. But the point is that once I embraced that there was nothing wrong with trying and failing and learning and adapting, then it was like a whole world was opened up to me, and I was no longer afraid of the failure, because I had failed, and literally nothing in my life changed. And in your mind, you're saying, oh, if I fail here, my whole world's going to fall apart. No one's going to love me anymore. I let everybody down. All my opportunities that I have are going to go out the window because I failed in this one thing. And that's, you don't saying it out loud, it sounds so stupid, but that's what you're thinking when you have that fixed mindset. Yeah. And of course, I was internalizing it. And so it wasn't until finally I tried my hardest at something and failed. And then I saw that what happened was not as bad as I thought it was. That now I started embracing a growth mindset, where now I was willing to try different things, and I was willing to accept that, hey, I may not be very good at this skill or this talent or this job or whatever, but I can learn to be good at it. And that's going to take a period of time of me struggling and looking bad and not doing a good job and having to be told, no, this is the way you do it. But eventually I will learn to master it. And then now I will be to where I am towards the top, because I was willing to put the work in it, and I wasn't afraid of the failure that you needed to do behind that. So that was kind of my background into keying into having a growth mindset and viewing it as a valuable part of being a business owner. So Melody, why don't you share how you kind of came into that mentality of embracing a growth mindset?
I think, well, my story is a little different, because I came from a background where I did feel like I was trying a lot of the time. And especially when you're younger, when you're in high school, it feels like the whole world could collapse if you don't get that right. And if you have a fixed mindset, you can get stuck thinking kind of like you're a victim to the world. Like the world, there's nothing you can do, there's nothing you can change, and everything that happens to you is not your fault. And not that there's fault, but like it's just happening to you. There's no control.
Yes.
And that's like a really awful problem to have, because it means you really can't move, you can't be successful. So for me, I was trying, but I was struggling all the time. I knew I had a learning disability, but they never really could figure out what it was. And so after high school, I tried college for a minute, and that didn't work. And then I just kind of did all sorts of things, including window cleaning and traveling and different things. And it wasn't until I was about 30 that I was actually formally diagnosed. That was like the 10th time I was finishing college.
Wow.
And it just really changed my life, because it helped me to understand that I wasn't stupid, that I knew I thought in a different way, but if everybody else is thinking a certain way and you're thinking in my head, I felt like I was thinking the wrong way. It just made me feel like I couldn't get it right. And so when I got that diagnosis, I really started studying what it meant to have ADHD, or what it meant to deal with a lot of the symptoms, which are still very frustrating. But just having the understanding of it allowed me to see life in a totally different way. And that was like my growth point in terms of just my confidence started to become different. I had always been somebody who was tenacious and wanted to accomplish things. And I think I've always had a growth mindset. I say that I'm an entrepreneur because I'm an optimist with a bad memory. That has never changed. And so that is like kind of needed in a way to be an entrepreneur. Like you have to have a bad memory, not for things that have happened, but for the emotion attached to the things.
Yes, exactly.
So everything becomes a lesson. Everything, whether it's good or bad, is a lesson. And that allows me to continue on with less fear, because a lot of what holds us back is fear. To the point now where I like to say, especially lately, I have strong beliefs loosely held, because I love debating with people. I love hearing people's opinions, but my mind can change, like I am not set on things. There are certain things I'm probably set on. There's a lot that I'm not set on, because I don't know everything. And so I think that having that mindset of being open to what other people have to say or input into your life, what other people believe, especially if you grow up in places where you don't have certain types of people around you, maybe, so you have ideas about them, whatever it may be. Like, it sometimes takes experience, but having that open mind, which is a growth mindset, is really important to be able to develop yourself into entrepreneurial, really. It's important.
Well, and we've touched on that part a lot in both in the Flowcast, also in my articles in American Window Cleaning Magazine, is the need to remove the emotion from a business decision.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you have emotion attached to it, and let's say you do start a business and you pour your heart into it and it fails, in the sense that you have to close it down. If you have too much emotion into that, you feel it attacking you personally, and that sting can be enough to get to make you scared to try it again. Whereas if you have that, if you can remove the emotion from it, and like you said, just view it as data, view it as, oh, okay, I tried this business, it didn't work out. Let's kind of analyze, well, what were the issues with it? Okay, I was marketing to an area that didn't have the clientele I needed, or maybe I didn't have the right equipment to make this successful. Next time I'll wait till I have the equipment to be able to do that. And then now you have data, so when you start the next one, you might be better prepared to avoid the mistakes you made in the first one. But if you've got too much emotion attached to it, you don't even want to go back and do what do you call it?
Assessment of it.
Assessment. Because it's too painful, because
all you see is, like, isn't that the problem with all of us? Like, I have so much emotion attached to everything I do. But I've learned, especially in the past 5 years or so, that I really do need to disconnect. I've gotten to the point where my business is not my baby. My business could fail. It could be stolen, whatever it is not going to destroy me at all.
Yep.
Because I've learned that when you don't do that and something bad happens, it really does take a part of your soul. It like feels like, and it shouldn't. It's just business.
That's one thing I was so glad I did really early on. And it was just, I think it was more of a protection to me, in case it did fail. But I told myself, if I enter into this business, I have to be okay with this business going away. Like I don't even want to start it unless I know that if I didn't if I wasn't a window cleaner because either I had to because it didn't do well financially, or my health changed, or other responsibilities came, or whatever, that if I had to leave it, I would not be upset. Now, obviously, there's, I put 22 years into this business. There's still going to be an attachment.
Yeah.
But I always ask myself that, like, so if I had to change, if I had to sell my business for some reason, or maybe the market fell out or whatever in my area, would I be okay starting over something else? And obviously you won't know until it actually happens. But so far I've been able to say, yeah, I think I would. I think I could walk away and start something else and feel like I wasn't losing out on anything, that I could take the lessons learned in this business and apply it elsewhere and be okay with that,
Well, and that I did start over.
Yeah. Oh yeah. A few times. And that's why I wanted to have you on.
Yeah. And so the first time that I sold my company, I really went into like a deep, it was a depression, but it was really like a crisis of identity of, I had invested so much of my time, my energy, everything was about the business. And especially when I spent so much time on like the equipment, the efficiencies, every little detail was so important to me. And it was busy work in a way, I look at business now, it's like a game. You get to like play this game where you get to make changes. But at the time, every little thing felt so important. And when I finally that wasn't in my life anymore, literally the next day, I did not know who I was anymore. And it was painful. And it took me a long time to detach from that. Like, who am I if not a business lady, And then I came back to it. But there's so many things that I've experienced with business, whether it be like going to court with somebody who's trying, there's like things that happen or that can happen or seem to happen to me, I guess. And if I didn't have the ability to see, like, to have that mindset of this is going to teach me something, and I'm making a choice to either go through this, or like I'm always making a choice to get through it, instead of pretending it's not happening, or like I'm always trying to do the hard work. And it makes all the difference, because I really don't think without those experiences that I would be where I am now, doing things that are different than window cleaning, but they're not like they're not the things that I thought I would be. I never imagined I would be doing what I'm doing now.
Right. Yes. Very cool. So let's get into kind of what the characteristics of a growth mindset are, because we say it, and I think other people have heard it, and it almost becomes like a buzzword. And I hate buzzwords because they almost it almost sucks the soul out of what the concept is. And so I don't want to spend a lot of time talking on the fixed mindset, because we're trying to avoid that. So let's talk about what a growth mindset is and what the characteristics are of that. So we already mentioned that a growth mindset is one in which you've kind of expanded your view. You're not just stuck in one area. You're looking for ways to change, to grow. You're not afraid to take on challenges. So let's talk about some of these characteristics, and we'll kind of go back and forth on each one. So the first one that's listed in this article that I got this information from, which is belief in development over time. So that means that if you don't have a skill, you can take the time to learn it and to get better at it and to be able to utilize it in your business. So that was something that I struggled with, because like I mentioned earlier, I felt like if I couldn't grasp it like that, I almost didn't want to invest the time to do it because it was almost like a waste of time. I only wanted to focus on the things or the skills that I seem to already have kind of a natural inclination to do, that my current skills fit in with that. And it's almost like when you work out and you get the guys who only do upper body because they like the way they look, and then their legs are like sticks because they never do the lower body because they're uncomfortable with it because they're not as strong. They like to lift the big weights and look like they're, that they're being impressive, but they don't work on the complete package of their body, and then it creates an imbalance, an asymmetry in their body. And we can do that as business owners. We can focus so much on the parts of the business that we excel in, like maybe the customer service or the actual
equipment or
equipment.
Yeah.
And then we neglect the stuff we're not good at. Maybe it's office work. Maybe it's doing our taxes. Maybe it's, HR stuff, trying to keep the culture in your business. And we just may not like that stuff. And then it can really actually hurt our company. So,
or we might be uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable with a lot of that stuff because it felt like, I just always assumed you had to go to college to have a business. And I had always thought that business was like a thing you just learned, like engineering or something, and then you would be able to do a business. And I felt like I was cheating a system by just starting or having one. But the thing that is, it's just, for me, it felt like I was able to, I'm sorry, my son just came in the room and totally distracted me.
That's okay.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, I think I have to end that sentence because I was not expecting him to.
That's okay. Yeah. Well, one of the things too that helped me with this, with learning to believe in development over time, were the conventions.
Oh,
and I avoided the conventions for a long time because I focused on the expense. And I just assumed there was really nothing I could gain from there, that I kind of already knew everything I needed to know for my situation.
And how wrong were you, right? I was the same way.
My very first one I went to was just the trade show at the IWCA.
Yeah.
And even just being exposed to different tools that I had never seen before, seeing demonstrations of how things work, learning about different chemicals. I mean, it just was like, wow. So the next year I went to a full convention. It was in San Diego, and it just blew my mind. And I didn't know how much I didn't know.
And we don't.
That's what was important.
Yeah. I think I'm going to get back to it now that my son is not here anymore. So I think that when I didn't know a lot about the business, like with, for instance, marketing, I used to pride myself on being a referral only business. And,
I hear that a lot.
Because that meant that I was really good. People just referred me, but it also meant I didn't have to grow beyond my comfort level in terms of marketing or sales or having more crews. And so when it finally was time for me to develop that part of it, was very uncomfortable. It was like, it just was a totally different way of doing business. And most people don't do business necessarily, not most, a lot don't do it by referral. Like they start with a marketing, budget or putting out flyers. I never did any of that stuff. So it's interesting, or like accounting and bookkeeping. I finally understand how my books work. I understand how to do all of that stuff, but I know that I am not meant to do that in my company. So I pay somebody else to do it. Yeah. So you should always understand the things that we need to be doing or that are going to affect our business, but it doesn't mean that we need to be the ones doing it.
Yeah. It's so funny how often, I shouldn't say often, it hasn't happened in a while, but there was a period where I felt like every other person on Instagram was messaging me. And because I on my Instagram, I would put reviews, and I would put, this is, my Google reviews, and this is how much we have, and a thank you for that, and I get a business owner would message me and say, oh, why are you focusing on Google reviews? That's you should focus on referrals, getting referrals from your company, from your customers. And I'd let them kind of go on their spiel about lecturing me on worrying about Google reviews or paying for advertising. And I say I should focus on referrals. And then I wait till they're done. And then I'm like, I actually do get a lot of work from referrals, but I also get a lot of work from Google reviews. And I get a lot of work from advertisers because you know what? I don't say no to any of those. I use all of them. Referrals from my customers are awesome.
Yeah.
So are Google reviews because I'm reaching different audiences with each of those things. So when you shut everything off because you say referrals are the only way to go, you that's a fixed mindset. You're saying these other options are garbage because they're not the one that I'm familiar with and that I'm comfortable with. And that's the danger. We limit our business in that way because we're saying these other options, I'm not even going to consider them because they're different from what I'm comfortable with. And it traps us, you know.
I'll be vulnerable for a minute and say that there have been many times in this industry where I could not accept information from other people because it felt like like it was hurting it. Like if I acknowledged that somebody else might know something more than me, that they would see me as being stupid. And that's obviously a high school, young person chip on my shoulder that I was holding on to. Right.
Yeah.
And it's something I still have to work on. I still have to be like open to hearing people, what they have to say, and understanding that people there are people who have been mentoring me for years that I couldn't hear the information they were saying to me 5 years ago. And now I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I listen to them 5 years ago? But I wasn't ready,
Right. That's it.
And it happens so often.
Yeah, that's one of the other characteristics of having a growth mindset is acceptance of feedback. And a lot of times you're right, when we get the feedback, we're not ready. And it could be we're not ready emotionally or we're not ready mentally, but it could just also be that our business is just not ready to handle that particular type of feedback,
Yes.
And I remember a long time ago, a friend had given me some advice about, if you receive advice that you don't think applies to you, put it in your pocket because you might need it later. And I always think about that when I receive input, because like sometimes people will talk to me and they'll give me advice that really is for a business that's maybe twice as big as mine.
Right.
So it doesn't really apply. It's talking about investing money that I probably don't need to spend right now because my clientele isn't that big. But I mean, who knows? If I get there, that may be good advice. So I'm not going to dismiss it and say, oh, that doesn't apply to me, forget it. I'm going to say, you know what, that doesn't apply to me right now, but I'm going to keep that in mind. And if my business ever gets there, now I have this little nugget of information or wisdom that can help me to make that transition to that level or whatever. But you have to be willing to accept it. And like you said, there's an emotional attachment as well. Because here I've been doing this for 20 years, and now maybe someone who's been a window cleaner for 10 years gives me some input. Am I going to say, oh, what can a guy with 10 years tell me? I've been doing this for 22 years. And we get that a lot, right, on social media all the time.
Totally.
So if we have a growth mindset, we're not going to dismiss that. Now we may dismiss it after considering it for a while. And we may say, after taking this and this and this and as a factor, I've decided I'm not really going to use this information. I think it's short-sighted. But to dismiss it out of hand right off the beginning, we're limiting ourselves.
I know some people who have grown. They're young and they've grown their businesses very quickly just by following the advice of people that I cannot follow the advice of, because my mind, the longer we do it, the harder it is to continue to keep open. But also the longer I've done it, the more I know that I don't know a lot, And so I really have always envied these people who can just attach themselves to the information and move forward, and they're killing it. But that's not going to work for me where I am, because I have to do a lot more work on, everything in here in my head. And they're at a different place. They're a different person. They have a different situation. So it's like sometimes that person who only has maybe 3 years in the business, they have advice that I could take, that they've done something. And if I was ready to hear it, they could actually help me. And just because they've only done it a couple of years doesn't mean that they don't have something helpful.
And sometimes those young guys, they've got an angle that they're looking at the business that we've been stuck over here. And they're looking at it from over here, and they're seeing stuff that we're just not seeing. And
Yes.
so we have to think of it that way, and maybe we're missing out on something that they see just because they don't have all the blocks up from being in
Oh,
the industry for so many
yes.
years, or
Yeah.
the patterns or the habits or whatever. And
Yep.
they may be hitting on something that's just a really good business idea, as the business environment changes, and how people are making money changes and the economy changes. Man, we can't be closed off to that for sure.
No. Well, and
Um,
I think, Gabe, just one more thing is that
mhm.
you and I have been in the business a long time. And when we started, there was not the kind of information freely flowing the way that it is right now. And so I'm kind of more forgiving of myself for not being able to just get with it a lot of times, because I had 10 years or 15 years of like just me trying to
Banging
figure
your
things
head against
out.
the wall.
Yeah, banging my head against the wall.
Yep,
And
yep.
undoing those patterns takes ages. It takes so
Yes.
much work. And it's something I actively work on all the time. But
Yeah.
it's important. I just want people to know who have been doing this a long time
Yeah.
that the more you practice this, the more you practice having a growth mindset, which is not an easy thing, but it can actually, it does work. Like you can open up your mind, you can see things differently. It takes a lot of work, really.
And humility.
Yeah, well, that's the big one is humility.
Yep.
And that's a hard one.
And with humility is comes closely with the next step, and that's getting inspiration from others.
Mm,
I think when you're a successful business owner, or even if you're not, maybe you're trying to get there, you're not quite there. When you see other companies succeeding, or kind of just at least getting like a good, getting some fire under them, or
yeah.
getting some good press, or they're hitting big on social media, and it's a tendency to kind of feel jealous about, and maybe
Yeah.
you're even resentful. Like, I've been doing this for 15 years, and here's this guy 3 years, and now look at how much work he's got or how much attention he's getting. And we can easily kind of fall into that realm of jealousy, or even getting bitter, that
Yes.
maybe it just seems like they didn't have to work as hard as we did, and they're getting the things we're working for. But if we have a growth mindset, we can take inspiration from that, because then we can
Yeah.
say, oh wait, hey, they've only been doing it 3 years, and they're doing, well, what are they doing that's working for them? Maybe there's something that we can learn from, right?
Totally.
Or we can just be happy. I mean, there's something to be said about being just happy for other people's success, you
Another
know?
practice right there, that is something that if you're somebody who struggles with that, like I'm very much happy for most people, but then there are times when it's just so hard to be happy for them because of the struggle that we go through.
Yeah,
But we don't know everybody's struggles. We know
we
nobody's
don't.
struggles because we're
Yeah.
not living them.
And yeah,
Yeah, of
a lot of times what we see on social media is the good side, right?
course.
We
Yeah.
see it's because it's curated, and of course they're putting their best foot forward, their best face forward. Everything's edited,
Yeah.
everything's done, and so we're seeing the final product. We're not
Why do we
necessarily
forget
seeing.
that?
I
We
know
always
why.
forget that in the moment.
We do. But
Yeah.
and that's one of our big things with our social media, is we're always trying to share other window cleaners stories, or if they got a cool TikTok, or they got a
Yeah.
cool reel, or maybe like an instructional video that we think is pretty solid. We try to
Yeah.
share those, because I think well, for one, it helps us to stay humble, that we know, hey, there's other window cleaners who are doing pretty good, and
Yeah.
they got some pretty good stuff out there, and they're helping others. But
Yeah.
two, it's like learning to be happy for others helps your success to be even that much more sweeter, because
Yeah.
you feel like you're a part of a culture, or a crew,
It's
or
a
a group,
community. You're
or
building a community
community.
around you, and
Exactly. And
everybody
we're all
is,
kind of lifting
yes,
each other up.
exactly.
And
That's like
it,
what Into the Flow is.
that's exactly what it was designed for.
Yeah,
That's his purpose, was to give us that community. So that's lifting each other up instead of pushing each other down, and trying
absolutely.
to climb up on someone else to get ahead.
Yes.
And so, yeah, or learning to gain inspiration from others is a big step. Another one, this was really hard for me, again, just from my background, viewing obstacles as temporary. I
Oh, yeah.
think when we hit a brick wall on something, we feel like that brick wall is always going to be there. And this happened to me when I first started hiring. I was a sole proprietor for years, I think for like 10 years before I hired my first employee. And I hired him. It seemed like it was working good until tax time came. And I didn't understand about payroll taxes. I didn't
Oh,
understand
yeah.
about, all of this stuff that just all of a sudden opened up. Workers' comp, my liability went up. And I realized that at the end of the year of when I hired my first worker, I made less personally
Yeah.
than when I was by myself. So I freaked out. And I
Yeah.
backed off, and I didn't lay him off. I think he quit. It was kind of just that
Yeah.
it ran its course. So he left. I just didn't hire, and I went back to just being a single owner operator. And I kind of felt that sting of like, oh man, why would I do that? And it took me a little while to realize that when you hire, what I call it is you have to break through the wall. You have to bust
Oh,
through the wall.
yes.
You
Yeah.
run into the wall. You can hit the wall. That means you're going to slow down. But
Yeah.
once you get past the wall, if you can break through it, now you're in a better position to run faster and you're able to go without that. And once you hire an employee, then your profits do eventually go up, but initially they're not. And so being prepared to, okay, there's going to be an obstacle here. It's going to take a little bit of time and effort and energy to overcome it. But once I overcome that obstacle, there's benefits and there's prosperity on the other side of that, and being willing to go through that, I think
I actually am somebody who sees a wall and then tries to find a ladder to get over the wall. But mostly what gets me is the exhaustion of running into those walls.
Yeah.
When we're all pretty tenacious as business owners, but I experienced it this past week where my exhaustion got so severe that it was like burnout, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like a burnout. And that's what usually, like when I used to have employee issues, that's the thing that would happen. There'd be a burnout of nothing's changing. And the thing that I've taken to is gentle extreme ownership, I call it, where I believe that really I can solve any problem. If I consider it to be not my fault, but like under my responsibility, then I can literally solve any problem. Awesome. That's a growth mindset idea.
Yes.
Yes. And so I always think like that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that I don't experience that, the burnout, which is the thing that's killer. Along with your thing of like backing off, it's, the same kind of thing. You back off because you don't like that feeling, or you don't like how that hurt, the sting. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. I kind of went through my first view of an obstacle as temporary with waterfed, because I've always been a traditional guy. I just never could afford a system. I was, single owner operator. I had small accounts. It was, 20 to 25 hours a week I worked. So I just never could justify investing in waterfed. And then we picked up this car dealership, and I just couldn't. If I was going to take this job, I was going to have to buy waterfed. So I said, well, I'm going to be doing this once a month. It will pay for the system. I bought the system. I started doing the work, and I struggled with. I just felt like, oh, this is garbage. Why here I'm doing? And I'm getting streaks. I'm getting spots. I'm getting drips after the fact after I'm leaving. Why am I going through all this hassle? And I could just be polling this manually, doing old school, 20-foot polling, and get it done. It's going to take me longer, but at least it's going to look good. I'm not going to have to go back, And I had a real negative attitude towards it for a while, and then I just finally was like, well, wait a second. There's other window cleaners who can do this. So obviously it can be done. This is an obstacle that can be overcome. Yes. I just haven't figured it out yet. So instead of sitting here whining and complaining, why don't I go try to find people who have done it and get their advice? And I did. And that was probably my first introduction to the pro window cleaning group, and that's when I started asking. I made a lot of connections there. And a lot of those guys that I made connections early on are some of the ones who started Into the Flow,
Yeah.
But that taught me a lot, that just because I may struggle at something and maybe I can't see the solution to it, that doesn't mean there isn't one. I just need to find who has the answer to that, and then try to learn and apply that,
Or watch the YouTube videos until you find the one that resonates with you.
Yeah. Watch the YouTube videos. Yeah. So just knowing that any obstacle we face, it's temporary. And,
totally.
It's only permanent if we let it be permanent. That we can figure out how to overcome that.
Yeah.
Another quality or characteristic of a growth mindset is the embrace of challenges. So that's wanting to be like almost like testing out your skills, testing yourself out to see, hey, can I overcome this? Can I, and so for someone who's a business owner like myself, who I'm always cognizant of, how long is this taking me? Is this worth the effort? Is this worth the hassle? Sometimes it's not, sometimes it's not worth the headache and it's not worth the hassle. But if there is something that can be overcome that may lead to long-term profit, that's when we embrace it. And that's when we're doing it, because we're kind of going through that right now. We just are going to be adding soft washing and pressure washing to our business. And I'm a very cautious guy, and I've been nervous about doing that for the longest time. And, but we got good guys. Had Luis Martinez come down this week.
I saw
and he's training our guys. 2 of my guys already had prior pressure washing experience.
That's great.
So their training was minimal, and we were just kind of in the spot where I'm like, you know what, this is, if I'm going to do it, this is the time to do it. And even just the few jobs that we've done so far have been way profitable, way more than what I thought.
It's really sad, actually, once you start doing it. I felt the same way when I started doing pressure washing or house washing. And I remember the real thing that it came down to was, I'm an expert at window cleaning. It's very uncomfortable to be not an expert at something.
Yes.
And yeah.
I had that conversation with Luis, because I met him at his Airbnb the night before to kind of go over how we're going to do the training and what we're going to teach, And so we're talking, and he's like, he's telling me, okay, we're going to do this and this. I'm like, okay. So I'll be here and I'll be doing, and he's like, are you going to get trained? And I said, well, yeah, of course, I'm the boss. I got to know what's going on. He's like, no, you're the boss. You don't have to know what's going on.
Yeah.
He's like, are you going to really be doing this? I thought you wanted to get off the glass. And I was like, yeah, I kind of do. He's like, then don't learn it, because if you learn it, you're going to feel obligated to do the work.
Absolutely.
So don't learn it. And that's going to force you to trust your employees to get it done. And it's going to keep you. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is brilliant. That is such good advice.
Yeah.
Because I was falling right back into my old trap. Like you said, I felt like if everything in my business, I had to be the expert, or at least be proficient. And I don't, No,
I am so over being the expert. I love not being an expert. Even in my virtual assistant business, one of the things I teach everybody is, you should not be the expert at your software, and you should not be teaching your VA or your assistant or your admin about software, because it's a waste of your time. You haven't learned it fully. And they can just watch the videos that the experts have made for them. And they will become the expert. They will solve their own problems. You will not have to worry about it. And you won't have to deal with it anymore. And sometimes the old way for me was, I have to teach them everything I know about, the customer factor or responsibid, whatever it was. And thank God I figured out that I didn't need to do that at all. And it's kind of just shifted my mindset completely. When I did soft washing, I did learn it, but then I started just buying a training system and didn't even do it. I mean, because it's not my favorite thing to do. I like window cleaning. So, but that training was totally worth it. Let somebody else train your people, just like Luis.
Yep. And that's what we did. And so just being able to kind of like just be uncomfortable, and that's part of embracing challenges, is understanding that, okay, I'm going to be out of my comfort zone, but eventually this will be in my comfort zone if I just kind of hang in there and kind of see the benefits of it. Like you say, trust the process, trust whatever you've done. And then in the end, after a while, your comfort zone just got bigger because this is now included in it, You
talked about your employees, just trusting your employees. Like, the cool thing is that when you don't know how to do something and you're vulnerable and saying, hey, I'm not going to be the expert on this. I'm trusting you guys to do to do it the way that I would want it to be done, but that you guys are going to be the ones who understand it and are the experts. Yep. If you have a great work culture and they like working for you, like, they're going to have your back. They're going to want to prove to you how great they can do this so that you don't have to worry. And that's always what I found when I let go, when I released. People were ready and willing to take up that slack for me. They had
Exactly.
just been waiting,
And there is no greater sign of trust and respect than telling your employee, hey, I trust that you're going to be able to do a good job at this,
Yeah.
and that just sends a message of, hey, you are a valuable part of my crew. I could not do this without you. They
Yes.
feel valued. They don't feel replaceable,
Yep.
and then they feel like they're part of a team, which is the culture we're trying to build here, is that
Yeah.
everyone has a role, everyone has a task. And when we all work together and do our part, everything runs smoothly, and there's pride in that. There's pride in feeling that well-oiled machine kind of going forward, and everyone's looking out for each other and everyone's doing their part, and you just get it accomplished. There's a really
Yeah.
cool feeling with that. And that's part of the culture we're trying to build. And that's not easy to do,
It's not
but
easy, but it's worth it.
yeah, absolutely. So the last one is a high regard for practice. And this can be a skill, like we're talking about doing something we've not done before, like if we're adding soft washing or we're gutter cleaning or whatever, that's apart from window clean. However, for me, more learning a new skill was more on the admin side and the system side,
Mm.
is understanding how to not just run a business, but how to run the systems of the business in an efficient way, and
Yeah.
I'm still running through that. I'm still working through that, but practicing and trying different things, and not being afraid if it doesn't work out, that it's okay. If this doesn't work, we'll just switch it around. We'll try something else. But continually going through different processes till you find one that works, then sticking with that and then building around that process. I think
Yeah.
that was a big thing for me to learn, for sure.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you on that. Like, I spent 10 years of my life trying to learn systems, or how to make systems. I didn't understand it. It just did not make sense to me. And then when it finally hit, and it was so simple, it was just, they needed to be simple. They could not be perfect. They should not be perfect. They just needed to be the simplest way to do something so that people can be successful.
Yes.
And once I got that, it was like I just pushed forward really quickly, actually.
Yeah.
And it got really much easier to systemize my company.
Well, and I found that with this, there's two things that are kind of important. So one is putting your employees in whether it's in the office or in the field, in the best spot for them to be successful. So
Absolutely.
to do that, you have to know their strengths.
Yes.
You have to know their abilities, what their limits are, what they're able to do and handle, what they can't handle. So knowing that and knowing what their strengths are, you put them in a position where they're using their strengths, and
Yep.
then they feel good. The other thing is not being overwhelmed or stressed out when you make mistakes. And
not getting stressed about employees making mistakes.
It's exactly that's where I was going to go next.
Yeah.
Is understanding that if they make the wrong choice or they make the wrong thing, because that's what I tell them. I say, like, I'm empowering you to make a decision. If you're on a job and the customer's upset and you say, hey, I'll tell you what, we'll do all of your mirrors for free as an apology for this, or you know what, you were expecting us to do the tracks even though you didn't buy the package that has the tracks. We're just going to go ahead and do the tracks and we'll make you happy, and I tell them that you don't have to get my permission on that stuff. You have my permission to do it. You're empowered to do that. Now, if I disagree with it, we'll have a conversation afterwards, but I'm not going to be upset with that decision because you made the decision that you felt was in the best interest of the business at the time. And I respect that. We'll fine tune it as we go, but as the more they're getting the practice and they're learning how to be a valuable team member. So now that's less work for me to do as a business owner because I'm trusting in them to be able to know. And if they have to be employees where they have to check in with me every single time, they're afraid of making the wrong decision.
Yes. And we've probably micromanaged them to that point.
Micromanaged. That's exactly right.
And we don't trust them because they're always coming to us and we're like, why can't they just do anything themselves? Oh, well, we didn't let them. So
we trained them that way. So, and so I'm always using that word with them. I'm empowering you to do this. Yes. You have my permission to do. And like I said, if there's anything wrong, then we'll talk about it afterwards, but that's okay. That's not on you. That's part of the process. It's part of the learning and the practicing, and then we're going to be able to get it. And when they do get it, and I absolutely trust their judgment now, that is a valuable employee right there. Right?
It's the best. Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can get them there fast.
Yeah.
It, once you're able to let go, that is the practice. That is the growth mindset thing of like learning to trust that they can handle. Just because you have 20 years does not mean that they need to have like even a year, even 6 months. They can be making decisions within a month if you enable them, if you give them permission, and if you teach them how to do that. And it's pretty cool once you see it, and you're building leaders.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I wanted to touch on with this is we talked about practice within the business, but in terms of like practicing, oh my gosh, my mind just went blank again. I was telling you that I had this crazy hotel night where we had a fire.
Yeah.
We had a fire alarm go off at our hotel, and we had to leave the hotel at 3:30 in the morning, and we didn't get back in for quite a while. So my brain is like very much not there. But where was I? Oh, mindset. Back to mindset. For me, the thing that I have to do is I practice positivity, because I have a tendency to be, I'm a positive person, but I have a tendency to be like New England cynical a little bit, maybe. I'm always looking for the angle. And so, for instance, creating the environment, the culture that I wanted within my company before was very difficult, because I didn't want to seem like uncool or too positive or too like, woo-woo or whatever. And I had to really let go of that and be vulnerable way more than I was comfortable with at the time. And what I found was that actually was effective and worked to create the thing that I was trying to create. And then the more it was effective, the more like I became kind of brave about doing things that were also more uncomfortable, that would all be effective. And so it created this thing where I can now build a team very quickly, because I am completely open. I am who I am. Like, I don't have to pretend to be some superhero as a leader. I know where my faults are. I know where my strengths are. And I kind of put it out there. I'm coaching them. I'm mentoring them, but I'm just being real with them and telling them that I want them to be successful. And that, I think modeling that you are not perfect as a boss allows them to see that that's okay, and then become more open themselves. I just made a video actually about how we pretend people are never going to leave our companies, right?
Yes.
And they come in and they pretend they're never going to leave from the very first day, and we pretend they're never going to leave. And I, from the very first day, am saying, I know you're going to leave someday, and I just want you to know that while you're here, I want you to be learning and growing, and I want you to leave here better than when you came.
Nice.
And what that does is it allows us to start our relationship from a place of trust immediately. There's no like funny little lie that everybody tells. It is really a thing crazy that we never talk about that. So it's these little things make a big difference in developing the relationships, but it comes from a place of like, you have to do internal work to get to the point where you can feel like you're not risking something.
Yeah. The way I have a very similar attitude. The way I word it though, when I interview someone is I say, so it's very important to me that this job fulfills you in the same way that you're working for me fulfills me. So I need this job to be worth it to you. That's important to me. I don't view you as an employee that you made the promise to be here, so you better be here and you better do this, because I recognize window cleaning may not be your number one passion. It's just a skill you have, and you can provide for your family that way. So I want to make sure that as long as you're with me, the job is providing what you need for you to be happy here, to help you pursue your passions, or to help your family, or to meet what other financial obligations you have, while still having a culture that you're comfortable with and that you're happy to come to work every day. If it ever gets to the point where what I can afford to pay you is not worth your time here and you can do better elsewhere, or maybe you can find another job which suits your passions or your future hopes or plans, by all means, I'm happy for you. I hope that what you learned here, like you said, benefits you, and you can take that to your next, chapter in your life. but I recognize that this business is not, I don't expect you to have the same devotion to this business that I do.
Yeah.
But if you want to stay here, man, we'd love to have you because you're going to
Oh,
do a
yeah.
great job and you're an asset to the company, So
Yeah.
I just try to help them to see that I have their best interest at heart, even though we need them and even though they provide profit for our company. That's not what's the most important to me. The most important is that while we're getting the profit, it's from individuals who are happy with what they're doing, because that keeps
Yeah.
the turnover low, that keeps
Yes.
the quality of the work high, that keeps they're happy when they're at the job. They're not grumbly and mad because they have to be here when they don't want to work or whatever,
Yeah.
you know. And,
We
and
don't
I
want
hope to
those
weed those
people.
clients
Yeah.
out,
Yeah. Those people. Yeah.
So
Yeah. And that does work. It works when it's that same thing of me saying like all that stuff to them is also to make sure that they understand that I expect them to come in with a growth mindset
yeah,
or to develop it like right
yeah.
from the start, because I want to be surrounded by people who are growing like I'm trying to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's whether it's an employee or a friend or whoever,
Yep.
So
Awesome. Very good.
yeah.
Well, that's all I had to talk about. Anything else you want to add on the topic before we close up shop here, Melody?
No, but I love this conversation. I think it's really so important, and I love that you're talking about it because it's not something everybody talks about.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I just want to emphasize again that no matter how long you've been doing this, no matter how much you feel stuck, little baby steps can get you to a point where you can actually make big progress in the way that you think, because anything is possible in this world, really. I hate that it's so cliche, but it's so true. If you just believe it, you can do it for so many things.
I tell you what kind of opened my eyes to that, to just what you just said. Like I said, I had been a sole proprietor for so long. It was just me, single owner operator. I had my little accounts. I had my customers who were long-term loyal. I had great reputation in my area. And then it got to where we had our daughter, and I was doing windows, and I had another job that I was doing. So it was kind of half and half. And I was working about 50 hours a week, between the both jobs. So I was working a lot, but I was making decent money. But then we had our daughter, and at first it was fine. She developed some health issues. There was a lot of hospital stays, and then there became procedures and surgeries and stuff that were needed. So those hospitals, and I don't have insurance, right? I'm a single owner operator. I don't have a company that I can draw insurance from. So it became very evident that either I was going to have to sell the business and go find somewhere else, like a regular job, or I was going to have to make the business work and take it seriously. And I actually tried to find a job, and I came real close to getting another one, where I would have started at like $15 an hour, but it just worked out. I decided, nope, I'm going to go full force into my business. Literally within 3 months of me actually focusing on and making an effort to grow the business, my profits just shot out the roof, and I needed to hire, it was just, I was like, man, all this time I didn't realize if I just chipped away at this little wall, there was this whole racetrack on the other side for me to take off on. I was just stuck like that whole illustration of the elephant that has the rope around its leg, and they do it when they're a little baby, and then there's this big, and they could easily yank it, but because they're stuck in that mindset, they don't, it works. That's how I was with my business,
My one for window cleaning was having a long time company where I had bought it from somebody else. So it was like 40, I think it was 30 years old. Having some of those customers the whole time, you can never raise your prices to match up with your. So the big one for me was just having to do a price restructuring at a certain point. That was 2019. And I was so scared. And after I did that, and I almost lost no customers. My profit went up immediately. I think at least 20%, if not more, for doing nothing different. And it was like, what was I doing all these years? I was feeling sorry for people. I had put emotional ties to the money they paid me. And it was valuable service to them. They would have paid me what I deserved to be paid from the start if I had the courage or the understanding to ask. These are the mindsets that we have to break through.
Yeah, Absolutely. So, all right, Flowmies. Well, that's it for Gabe's Corner here. We thank Melody for joining us and giving us her insight and her experience. We really appreciate it. I think it made it a lot better show. And if you guys are stuck in a fixed mindset, hopefully you listen to this maybe a couple times, get some ideas on how you might be able to break through and really work on getting that growth mindset as your first way of thinking. And it's going to make a huge difference in your business. So thank you guys for your time. You guys have a great weekend. And as always, flow on.